Do you need a break?
You read my mind.
Come with me.
Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination, because that's what we're focusing on. Imaginary stories that are yet so relevant to the world in which we live. We're going to talk about Star Trek, Star Wars, some books that I've read, and much, much more. So stick around, and of course there will be anime as well. And this episode of my podcast, like everything I do, it's all made possible thanks to a wonderful small community of patrons that help me with micro donations. And if you are able to support me and you like what I do and you would like me to continue to do this, then I need your help. And I would like to invite you to go to patreon.com/Father Roderick and sign up. You can start for free. So it's free for everyone. And then for, I think, $2.50, it's $2.50 a month. That's dollars, so that might be different in your currency, but it's the same amount of money. You will get access to the premium version of this podcast, which means an extra long, like twice as long episode every week. And then for the people that are able to donate a little bit more, they get a premium version of my other podcast, The Walk, and so on and so forth. But every little bit helps, and we're trying to close a pretty big financial gap until the end of the year. I used to do this for free because I was working in the world of television, but that job is no longer there, and so we're now currently using up our reserves. And of course, reserves are reserves. At one point, they're going to be gone. So in the meantime, I'm hoping to find more people that can help me to continue this stuff. So if you enjoy this, take a look.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
Is Taika Waititi's Star Wars movie shelved? Has it been cancelled? Well, he actually just talked about this in a new interview. So let's discuss. As you know, there are a number of Star Wars movies in production, in various phases of production. Some of them have been announced with a date that we will see them at the movies. And next year is going to be the year that we will see new Star Wars. And then the year afterwards, is that actually correct? Now that I'm saying it, I'm starting to doubt. That sounds very soon. And of course, we've had the writer's strike and the actor's strike. So maybe it's next year. Anyway, forget that I said that, because I'm not sure anymore. No one is certain right now about release dates. We've seen so many movies being pushed forward in time, well, because of the state of the world in which we live, because of the writer's strike, because of the still lingering effects of the pandemic. And so, but we know for sure that we will get 2 Star Wars movies in 1 year, and then the year afterwards we'll get a third one. None of those movies are made by Taika Waititi. But, of course, we all know Taika Waititi from his Star Wars role in The Mandalorian. He played that killer droid, remember? Well, of course, he just did the voice, but he also contributed greatly to the humor of that character. And I still miss him. I know that he's still around technically, but I don't think he's going to have a recurring role in the next season of The Mandalorian. By the way, I also read this news story that The Mandalorian will actually not feature Pedro Pascal anymore in the next season. It doesn't mean that the character of The Mandalorian is no longer going to be in the series, because, of course, the Mandalorian, that's him. Of course, there are other Mandalorians. Katie Sackhoff's character, of course, obviously Sabine, has become a major Mandalorian role. So you could also say, well, the Mandalorian could also be, referring to her. But we all agree, of course, that you need that father figure and you need Grogu. Otherwise, it's not going to be The Mandalorian. And I will stop watching if Grogu is no longer part of the show, and also his substitute dad. But as you may be familiar with, the character of The Mandalorian is only played by Pedro Pascal whenever his helmet comes off. That's when we see him. And of course, he is voiced by Pedro Pascal. But most of the acting that you see, most of the stunts are performed by other actors and other stunt performers. And so, but nevertheless, was a bit of a shock to hear that Pedro Pascal will not be back for the next season. So what about Taika Waititi? This is a movie that has been announced actually before we heard of these upcoming 3 movies. Taika, ever since he worked on The Mandalorian, has said that he loves the Star Wars universe. He'd love to make a movie. He has ideas. And at the time, Kathleen Kennedy was super enthusiastic. She's like, yeah, by all means, you'd go for it. But then, of course, Taika Waititi got kind of busy. Actually, he already was very, very busy. He's been working on several movies, of course, and also roles in the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He's been at the helm of this Thor movie. Was it Thor Ragnarok? I think so. So that all delayed his movie, even to the point that we didn't hear about it anymore. And I was getting worried. Like, I really would like to see a Taika Waititi Star Wars movie. Not just because he's one of the funniest people in the world, but also because I know that he loves Star Wars and I know that he's going to be a good job. This is one of the, at least in the realm of, let's say, geeky movies, one of my favorite directors and writers. So I made a list of things that have been said about this movie and what Taika himself has recently revealed about his upcoming movie in I think it was a Variety interview. So let's go to this first interview. Taika Waititi said, at the moment, I am still developing something with them being Lucasfilm, Disney. Like me, they have a lot of projects going on. I think they're going to push it until I finish these other projects. Oh, this was actually to Entertainment Today, I think. We've got about 4 other scripts that I'm trying to finish. My thing is I want to take my time with that and get it right. I don't want to rush this movie. So this is not actually his most recent interview. This is something he said a couple of years ago. Now, when Entertainment Today or Tonight, I don't know, ET, what does it stand for? Extraterrestrial. ET phone home. When ET spoke to Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy back in April, she echoed Waititi's comments. Oh, yeah, all that's underway. She told ET about Waititi's project as well as Disney Plus's Lando series. There is no pivot. It's all underway. Taika is a little slow. Everybody's busy. But yeah, those are great projects, and we're definitely still doing them. So this has been kind of the recurring message coming from Kathleen Kennedy. Yes, we're moving forward. It's just taking a bit more time. Nothing to see here. Move along. So what else do we know about this movie? Waititi was announced to be directing and co-writing this Star Wars movie goes back to May 2020. That feels like an eternity ago. And originally that movie would come out this year. But then, of course, there was this little thing, the pandemic, that kind of slightly changed some plans and some people's lives. And so, of course, that was off the table. And initially, Waititi would be co-writing this with someone else. And that would be actually Christy Wilson-Cairns. She is from Scotland. She's a screenwriter and very acclaimed screenwriter. But in March 2023, it became clear that Waititi is writing this movie all by himself. So it probably also is, has nothing to do with creative differences, but more likely just with people's agendas and calendars. You can't commit to a project like this for several years if you have so many other stuff that needs to be done. So there's nothing to worry about there. Now, according to a rumor, but I've never read anything online that confirmed this, but apparently he has said that he would also like to play a role in this Star Wars movie. That would be interesting. Could he be reprising his role as the killer droid, or is it something new? Who knows? I'd love it if he would do that. In 2021, so that's just 1 year after this project was announced, he also gave an interview and he said, "We've got a story, and I'm really excited by it because it feels very me." As for bringing his humorous tone to the more heartfelt Star Wars universe, Waititi suggested, "It's no problem. I tend to go down that little sincerity alleyway in my films," he commented. "I like to fool the viewer into thinking that, it's this," and then they are going, "Dang, you made me feel something." Now, I love this because it means that he's not writing a comedy. He wants to touch the hearts of the Star Wars fans, being a Star Wars fan himself. And I like that. I really, I had no doubts that would be the case. But I think when he says this openly, it's because he has an idea for a story that will actually be touching our hearts. And Star Wars needs that. Star Wars is not just special effects and lightsaber duels and, just bad guys being bad and good guys being good. No, you need to be able to relate to characters, and the heart of Star Wars has always been family. And so it needs to come as close as possible to that feeling that you have. It's like, these people are my family. I want to follow their journey on screen because I'm like a brother or sister or a daughter or father or grandfather or whatever. So he told Screen Rant in 2022, so that's a year later. So he's already been working on this for 2 years now. He said, I'm still writing. I'm still coming up with the ideas and storylining it, and just wanted to make sure that it feels like a Star Wars film. Because I could say, oh yeah, we'll just write any old thing and set it in space and then put Star Wars on the front. But it wouldn't be a Star Wars film without certain elements and a certain treatment. So I've just got to make sure that it stays within that wheelhouse. I would love to be able to interview Taika Waititi about his definition of what makes Star Wars Star Wars. I have some ideas myself, but I would like to hear from him why a good story, it does not necessarily make for a good Star Wars movie. So what are those secret ingredients? The fact that he's aware of that Star Wars is special, again, gives me hope. And then earlier this year, in May, Taika Waititi revealed that he has a really good idea for this movie, which is kind of what he said 2 years ago, but he is struggling with the second act. You're like, so what's going to happen? The second act. Normally a story has 3 acts, right? It's the call to action, the situation, where are we, and then who's the hero, and why need the hero go on a journey. The second act is where all the action happens and all the drama. And then the third act is, of course, the resolution. So he's still struggling with the second act. We don't even hear him talk about the third act. And then he asks himself, so what's going to happen? And then you look at all those films that are so great, and you're like, well, I guess they can't meet some smuggler with an alien sidekick, he explained. So he's like, I don't want to do what all the other Star Wars movies have done in the past. I cannot just copy the relationship between Han Solo and Chewbacca and just replace them with different characters that feel the same. Yes, that would be kind of Star Wars-like, but at the same time, it would just be rehashing something that has already been done. So he wants to bring something new to the table. And I think what makes it so hard for him is that, on the one hand, it has to be like the Star Wars we know. And at the other hand, he wants to do something new, something we haven't seen yet. How do you bring that together? That's probably why he's struggling. And then, in the same month, Kathleen Kennedy gave an interview, and she said, yeah, Taika is working away. He's just, and he won't get mad at me for saying this. He is slow. And then she says, we've got a couple of acts, which means 2. We just need a third. So I'm thinking, oh, wait a minute. So Kathleen Kennedy says, there is no third act. There's just a first and a second act. And Taika has said in the same month, I'm really struggling with the second act. So that's not done. And there is just no plan, no idea on how to end the movie in a satisfactory way. So that's a bit worrisome. According to entertainment journalist Jeff Schneider, and this is very recently, he says it's not dead. The project is not dead. Taika has turned in multiple drafts at this point, multiple drafts, and other writers as well have touched it. So that's new too. We didn't know that other writers are helping because, well, Taika has long maintained that he wanted to write the whole thing himself. So now other writers are also stepping in, which kind of indicates to me that Disney probably wants to get over this part of the process. They need to plan this in. They need to put something on the horizon and schedule it in. And of course, a movie requires so many other people and companies to be involved, and their schedule has to fit with your plans. And so I'm thinking Kathleen Kennedy's putting some pressure on the whole project so that at least they know when they can move on to the next phase. And according to this entertainment journalist who usually knows quite a bit of what's going on behind the scenes, Taika owes Lucasfilm another draft after the writer's strike is over. So apparently this was in the middle of the writer's strike that he wrote this. And now that the writer's strike is over, Taika has probably, or obviously, promised that he would give another draft, which kind of means that a draft is the whole story, right? So he must have had some ideas about how to end this story. So just the most recent, in his most recent interview, he said, I'm still working on this. I'm just very busy. That's basically what it is. That's all we know. I know it's not much, but at least it's something. So let's hope that we'll soon see some more news.
Space. The final frontier.
Now, one franchise that doesn't seem to have any trouble putting out new stuff is, of course, Star Trek. And we've seen so many great Star Trek series in the past few years, and there's more to come. Of course, the biggest one for me, or the most important one, is Strange New Worlds. For me, that's the best that Star Trek has ever done. And, of course, you may get upset if you're a Star Trek fan, because there is this other big series that has a special place in the heart of many Star Trek fans, which is Deep Space Nine. And I've confessed it before, and I've never been absolved by Star Trek fans. I have not finished watching Deep Space Nine. However, I'm making amends as a good Catholic priest. I am doing my best to, after this confession, to repair the situation, right? It's part of confession. It's like, it's not just being forgiven, but it's also you try to do something about the harm that you caused. Not that I caused any harm, but I probably just missed out on a lot of good in the world. So I'm currently watching Deep Space Nine for the first time in my life. And thankfully, it is available on Netflix. And I've explained before that I have the cheapest tier Netflix subscription, so it means it's not even HD. But I have to say, Deep Space Nine itself is not really HD. It was filmed in the time that they were still filming everything in 4:3. It's very low resolution. The whole thing has never been upscaled, remade or remastered for Blu-ray. And I think one of the main reasons is, and this is different from The Next Generation, which of course has had a fantastic remaster in maybe not in 4K, but definitely in HD. But for The Next Generation, everything was filmed using real film with just old-fashioned cameras, whereas I think Deep Space Nine was filmed on tape, which means that's a locked resolution. You cannot rescan tape to make it look sharper. Although we're getting to the point that AI is getting so smart that it is actually able to add detail to what we see based on like studying the material. And the more you train an algorithm, the more it will get good at just completing certain images. Like right now in Photoshop, you can say, well, this is my photo, but I want to have something on the left, which I didn't include that in my picture, but just pretend that it's this, that this picture is bigger and just add a mountain on the right and a tiger on the right, on the left, and it will actually create that, and it will look, well, very convincing. This is also right now being implemented in the world of video editing. There are already tools right now, thanks to AI, that are able to, for instance, take a vertical video and then make it horizontal by just adding landscape. And like, if I film myself in a garden, and I'm just, of course, I need to be like, if my hand, the moment my hand moves out of screen, then the algorithm is right now unable to fix that. But if I'm just standing still and the camera is also fixed, it then can extend the image on both sides. Imagine that in the future we may be able to do this with 4:3 footage, and the computer can just watch like every Star Trek series ever, and then the algorithm can say, well, you know what, this is the Enterprise C or D or whatever, and so I know from having studied all these images and maybe also been being taught with real models or whatever, or maybe artists have fed me some more information. I can just expand this scene. I can make this widescreen, and I'm pretty convinced that upscaling something in a convincing way. Right now, you can upscale, but it still looks like upscaled material. But I think that we're getting to the point where AI can do upscaling, and it will look sharper than the original ever was. So maybe in the future we will see like a Blu-ray, or at least make an upscaled version of Deep Space Nine. Anyway, long story short, I'm enjoying the 4th season of Deep Space Nine, and there were two episodes that were just amazing. It's towards the end of the season, and this is where the story, for me at least, becomes really interesting. For like the first 3.5 seasons, some of the stuff was good, but there were also a lot of episodes that were just very generic Star Trek, problem of the week. But now you feel that, okay, there is this war breaking out, and it starts to add layers of complexity. And you feel that the more and more time in the series is being dedicated to this central problem that is going to ultimately culminate in whatever big, confrontation is going to happen in the last season. And you feel that, okay, the series for me finally gets focus. However, I do think that you need those previous seasons because you need to feel something for the characters. And so for 3 seasons, they've been building up this crew. And it's not really a crew because it's a stationary situation. But we get to know all these different characters, different aliens. We do know a little bit about the political context in which Deep Space Nine operates. And now that we have all that in our mind, now the war can really start. So what I really loved about the 2 episodes that I would like to briefly mention here, in case you want to rewatch something, or in case you need my excuse to go rewatch some Deep Space Nine episodes. So here's the first one. I thought it was fantastic. It's called The Quickening, and this is episode 24 of the 4th season. So in The Quickening, Dr. Bashir and Major Kira and Lieutenant Commander Dax travel to a planet that has been attacked by the Jem'Hadar. And this horrible enemy has inflicted an incurable disease called the Blight on the inhabitants of the planet as a punishment for resisting the Dominion. The Dominion is the big, evil entity, or that's basically the enemy in Deep Space Nine. And the Dominion is using the most horrific, inhumane strategies and methods to submit planets to their will. It's very cruel. And so in this case, they have infected an entire planet with an incurable disease, and people are dying. And the disease first leave painful black lesions on the body, and then that quickens at one point, and you basically, it's almost as if you are completely covered in burn wounds, and it's a horrible death. So when Dr. Bashir and Kira and Dax arrive, they hear about this guy who is actually helping the sick, and that sounds very noble. They go visit him, and he kind of presents himself as a doctor. And lots of people come to him in the final stage of the disease, but especially Bashir is like, so what exactly do you do? Do you give them medication? Do you give them palliative care? And it turns out they discover that he's actually euthanizing these people. And that he has convinced these people that is actually the best way out. There is no cure anyway, so we might as well get it over with if there is no. And what I loved about this episode is how much Bashir is outraged by this. He said, you're supposed to be a doctor. We're supposed to heal people or at least take care of them. You're killing them. It's the opposite of what we need to do. And that motivates him to start developing a cure. And he finds some volunteers. At first, everybody's very reluctant, of course, because the Dominion also came from outside and they were subjugating the entire planet. But after a while, Bashir manages to convince them that no, he's really there to help them. But he makes a mistake, or he didn't know that his equipment radiates a certain electrical field, which makes the disease much worse and creates a lot of pain. And so everybody's like, you see, Matt's another guy who says, I've got the solution, and we're not going to get our hopes up. This is just, let's just live with this until we cannot live no longer, and let's put an end to it then. He then meets a woman who is really, I wouldn't say it's a romantic relationship, but he really cares for her, and she's pregnant, and he wants to save not just her but also the baby, and so he works day and night to develop a cure, and then at first it seems like she's getting better, and then she still dies, but the baby is born, and the baby is free of the disease, and is no longer being able to be contaminated. So that's the first ray of light and hope that he finds. And so that's what helps him convince the rest of the planet that, there is a way out. And then he decides to stay there on the planet to continue working on a cure. I really loved, and then even the guy who was euthanizing people comes over and says, I'm going to help you. So Bashir, by giving his own, by witnessing basically of his vocation to save people instead of killing them, manages to convert the heart of someone who thought that euthanasia is basically the ultimate gift that you can give people. I mean, I was stunned at the relevancy of this episode, and I wonder if today they would write the episode like this, because euthanasia, unfortunately, in many parts of our world is becoming more and more a common thing that is even proposed by doctors. I live in a country in the Netherlands, where euthanasia is just seen as just one of your options, And as you know, as a Catholic and as a priest, I'm very worried about that trend. Because, of course, in very practical situations, suffering can be horrible. But at the same time, you get on this slippery slope, and we see this all the time in our country, where instead of taking care of people, well, we don't have personnel for that, and, our society cannot cope with all these sick people. Euthanasia is sometimes just chosen as a quick resolution of a problem that otherwise would require too much sacrifice of society. This episode of Star Trek, I feel, is something that it's a message that is important and relevant, and I applaud the character of Bashir to stand with the oath that he once swore. I suppose that doctors in Star Trek universe also swear an oath that they will protect the lives of people instead of ending the lives of people. Anyway, very, very relevant. Now, talking about dying and death and disease, the second episode that follows after this one, episode 25, also talks about the same issue, but this time it's Quark, the Ferengi who runs the casino on Deep Space Nine, who has been diagnosed during a journey to, I think, his home planet, that he's been diagnosed with an incurable disease, and he is certainly going to die. So what does he do? As a Ferengi, he's like, I'm going to sell my body online so I can make some money to pay my debts. Because, of course, he's got a lot of debts everywhere. And that's what he does. He's convinced that he's going to die. He says, well, you know what? I'm putting up my body, my remains, on auction. So at least while I'm alive, I can still make some money off my impending death. The problem is he's been misdiagnosed. And someone has already bought the rights to his remains, and then comes to Deep Space Nine to reclaim his body. So he basically has to kill himself to fulfill the debts, because he's already told his debtors, I'm going to pay off my debts because I'll be dead anyway. I've sold my body. And so he is in he's between a rock and a hard place. And being a Ferengi, he believes that a contract with a fellow Ferengi, this is not true for any other race, but if you have a contract with a Ferengi, another Ferengi, you need to honor it, even if that means that he has to kill himself. And so he is he's in a very, very difficult situation. And I was wondering, how are they going to solve this story? So if you still want to watch it, don't listen to what I'm about to reveal. Just move forward a few minutes. But he ultimately ends up dreaming that he is going to Ferengi heaven. And that's where he meets the first Magus. Magus is some kind of pope for the Ferengis. And this first Magus that appears to him in a dream in heaven, in Ferengi heaven, is the one who wrote the rules of acquisition, which is like all these rules that kind of direct the marketing and the business behavior of Ferengi. And he has a conversation with the Magus, and the old Magus tells him, you know what, yeah, you're too much of a stickler. This is about your life. You're going to lose your life over a bunch of rules. You know what? They call them rules of acquisition. But in fact, when I wrote them, I thought they were just mere suggestions. Like, that is so funny. And then he ultimately convinces Quark in the dream that Quark has to kind of loosen up a little bit. And when he has to choose between honoring these rules or his own life, he has to just discard the rules. So he wakes up, and that's what he does. He breaks the contract with the guy who came to claim his body. He repays him, even with interest. So, in terms of, we would say that's a very honest way of resolving the situation. But for Ferengi, of course, that's not enough. And as revenge, the guy just robs Quark from all his status in the Ferengi community, and even puts a claim on everything in his casino. So the entire place is broken down. Everything is sold, and Quark is left in his pajamas, basically. And even those, I think the next day he still has to hand them over to the other guy. And this is where the episode really becomes emotional, because then you see Quark, and he's no longer kind of like the theatrical guy that he usually is. He's completely broken, and he feels like there's no one in the world that can help me. And then everybody starts showing up, all the people and everybody, of course, has mixed feelings about Quark. Nobody really likes him, but at the same time, he's still a part of the community. And so what they do is they bring him new chairs, and it's like, of course, they don't tell him we're going to help you. No, it has to be a transaction. So we need storage space. And since this place was available, we're bringing in some tables, and we have some gambling equipment and some music, and we need to put that there. We're going to charge you for it. And then Quark is like, I'm in heaven. I'm truly in heaven because I have friends, and friends are helping me to have a new future. I thought it was a brilliant episode, and definitely the best Ferengi episode that I've ever seen.
Japanimation. Cool.
We're wrapping up the show for the general public, I should say, because of course the show is twice as long for my patrons. With my weekly excursion to the world of Japanese animation, or anime. And I started watching another series at the recommendation, as usual, of my followers. And what I love about being on TikTok and talking about anime is how vibrant the community is, and how much they're often suggesting, oh, if you like this, you're certainly going to like that. And I need that information because I didn't grow up with anime. I wish I had a community like that for comic books, because I, again, totally grew up without comic books. We had the European ones, but I don't know anything about the Marvel universe. I have this subscription to the Marvel, Marvel Unlimited, but I just don't know where to start. There are thousands and thousands of comic book series, and I don't know what's good. So, thankfully for anime, I do have that community. And usually they're right on the money. Sometimes they kind of overestimate my my resolve. So sometimes they will recommend stuff and I start watching it and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is so violent, or this is not for me. But if I sense that it is important to a large part of my community over there, I still watch it and I still comment upon it, because I believe that, I'm watching anime because I want to figure out why certain stories connect with people. Even if there are stories that don't connect with me, I'm still, my fascination with anime is this: it's a different world from the world that I know. These are different stories from the stories that I grew up with. But they're still stories that are still entertaining. There's always a message, and I want to figure out what that message is. So I watched the first 3 episodes of a series called Fullmetal Alchemist. And this series really surprised me. I did a video about this, which I'll probably soon post on my anime YouTube channel, and also on TikTok, of course. This is a series that was a lot deeper than I expected. The story is about this world in which alchemy is considered a science, just like any other science. It has rules. There's nothing magical about it, nothing satanic or whatever. No, it's like these certain powers, but well, just as you can be a physician or a chemist, you can also be an alchemist. And there are these 2 boys that have learned a bit of alchemy, but disaster strikes and their mother dies of a disease. There's a pandemic or whatever, epidemic, and so they lose their mother. And that's when they're still very young at that time. They're like, well, maybe we can use alchemy to bring back our mother. Maybe, and then they know that that's actually one of the rules that you cannot transgress. It's absolutely forbidden to use alchemy on humans or to revive human beings. And this has to do with a rule in this world, which I felt was so interesting. The rule is called the law of equivalent exchange. That sounds complicated, but it's basically, in order to get something, you need to offer up something of equal value. And this is a very important rule in alchemy. So, for instance, you have a broken radio. At one point, they accidentally destroy a radio. Just a usual thing you use to listen to radio stations. So the whole thing is in pieces. They can only fix this using alchemy because the actual physical amount of matter stays the same. But they wouldn't be able to create like a television out of it because a television needs more parts. So, but this is also true on a moral level. You cannot, and this is why you cannot use alchemy to revive human beings, because it is said that a human soul, a human person, has infinite value. And I'm thinking, wow, that's deep. That is so theologically correct to say that. There is nothing more valuable than human life. And so there is nothing that you can pay for redeeming that life or bringing it back, because you need something of infinite value. Maybe the only deal you could strike is my life to save your life, which then, of course, goes to the heart of what Jesus defines as the greatest gift of love, is giving your life to save the life of your friends. That's ultimately what he is doing, although he does it for all of us, even for future generations. Because why? As the Son of God, his gift is infinite, and only an infinite gift can bring back the lives of all these eternal souls. Now, this is not exactly said like that in the series, but it is implied. And so I added some of my theological thoughts to the video, and I hope that my audience will kind of be okay with that, because I normally don't do that. I don't try to preach or anything. I just try to explain, like, okay, as a priest, this is what I see, and maybe this is how you can understand. But now I'm adding just my personal opinion to this. So it remains to be seen, but why not? I think I do have the trust of a lot of my followers. So a little bit of theology every once in a while may be interesting. Plus, this is my genuine reaction to seeing this. There's more to the series. You'll have to watch the video. But there is also this question of how is it possible that a religion that is corrupted not because of its maybe the beliefs, but because of its leaders or sometimes the founder. How can that religion, even though it's rotten to the core, can still be a source of consolation and hope for people? So how can something that stems from bad people still do good? This is a very relevant question that is also true in our real world. I'm asking myself this for a decade now. It's like, how is it possible that a church, my church, who has done so much in history that is the opposite of what its founder, Jesus, would have wanted us to do. And think of the abuse scandal, but also the abuse of power and the wars and whatnot. And even today, there's so many people in the church that you're like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe that they pretend to be people of God. While in their behavior and the way they judge others, it's the opposite. How can that faith still nourish so many people, including myself, on a day-to-day basis? I think it can only be because there is something that is beyond what religion is. Not just something of human making and dependent on the quality. This is also true for a priest. A priest can do good even though he himself is evil. So if someone like a priest is a sinner, he can still, and I think this is by the grace of God. So it's not because of his merit, but God can also work through his ministry to do something good in the world. Think of all these crooked preachers that have, were embezzling money behind the scenes and everything. And yet it may very well be that they're preaching, which they didn't follow themselves in their personal lives, but their preaching could have still changed lives for the better and may have inspired people to do great deeds of charity. So I was surprised to see themes like this in a Japanese animated series. The series is called Fullmetal Alchemist, and I'm looking forward to the other, 48 episodes that I still have on my to-watch list. Oh. And with that, it is time to wrap things up. If you want to listen to the premium version of this show, as I mentioned before, go over to patreon.com/Father Roderick, and I would love you to be part of my Patreon community. Anyway, as I mentioned, it's free. So just go there, sign up, and you'll get access to everything I post there. And every day I try to bring more value to my patrons, the paying ones and the people that are just there for the community. Thanks to all of you that are supporting me. And for you, I will continue the show with everything I learned on the internet, with a book review, some recipes that I tried out this week, and much, much more. So stick around, and we'll talk soon. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and see you next time. All right. Oops. So that was the first part of the show. Now I'm going to record the premium part. I said it was like twice the size, but I always go a little bit overboard in the first part because it's about stories that I love so much. So anyway, I've still got about 20 minutes for the patron show, which means I can close this window, go back to OneNote. And then we'll just move over to the books section. Here we go. Everything in place? Yep.
Why are you wearing glasses?
Reading.
Reading?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know you could read.
I actually have reading glasses, but in order to read, I don't have to wear them all the time. Why? Because I read a lot of books by listening to them. I'm a huge fan of audiobooks. A lot of people actually have more trouble concentrating on audiobooks than they have on just a paper book or on a Kindle ebook. But for me, it's the opposite. If I sit down in a chair and I try to read on my Kindle, worse, even on the iPad, which has a lot of other stuff on there, which I also want to check, and you've got these notifications and everything. But my favorite way of reading books is by listening to the audiobook version of it. Also because it adds sometimes just atmosphere, especially if you've got a good reading voice or someone who can do like different characters. Sometimes the intonation adds just so much atmosphere. My favorite example, of course, is what I talked about last week. It's the Andy Serkis version, his audiobook version of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and now The Silmarillion. Just him reading it adds so much to the book that I couldn't be able to inject myself if I were just reading the thing on paper. Now, I've already mentioned last week that I was reading Red Rising, and I had read the book, the original book, I think 2 years ago, and I totally forgot about it. Now the 6th book in the series, it has come out, and I just want to catch up because I did love that first book, but I didn't want to just reread the same book, and so I found this audio dramatization. And it is amazing. And I've now finished just yesterday. No, this morning, actually. Early this morning, I listened to the final 30 minutes of the audiobook, of the second part of the audiobook, because it's a very, very long audio version. And it was amazing. I now feel like I've seen a movie. Maybe this is also because the story, especially in this first book, is kind of similar to one of my favorite young adult movies and also books, namely The Hunger Games. And this week, a new movie comes out, which is not a sequel to The Hunger Games, because that story is finished, but it is a prequel. It shows how the world became the world we get to know in the beginning of the Hunger Book Games, where the United States is divided into all these various districts, and every district has a certain function, but they all basically serve this upper class society in Panama. What was the name of that major city there? Pan Am. And these Hunger Games are organized each year to subjugate people, basically, to give them a little bit of hope, because these kids from every district have to fight each other to the death, and only one district will have a winner, and that district will that year get a lot of bonuses, basically. And it's a gruesome way to keep people under control, but it works. And so in this prequel movie that comes out this week, and which I probably will go see, maybe even tomorrow, like in a matinee. I don't have a subscription to my local theater anymore, and I've just looked at the prices, and it's insane. And maybe you're laughing at me because you live in the United States and it's even more expensive over there. But like a regular movie here is now 17, 18 euros, which is more than $20, more than 20 American dollars. When did that happen? It's just crazy. I mean, no wonder that people don't go and see the new, Marvel's movie, even though I've heard that it, despite all the negative criticism, is a very, very good a fun Marvel movie. I would love to go see it, but they don't show it in the morning, so it's just too expensive. I don't want to spend more than 15 euros on a movie. However, they're showing The Hunger Games also in the morning, so I'll be able to watch it for $10, which for me is kind of that's how much I want to pay for a theatrical movie. Anyway, so the story of Red Rising is similar in a sense that, and I don't want to repeat myself, but the main character, Darrow, is ending up in this high society on the surface of Mars. And he is genetically modified to look like the elite. But even among the elite, they're constantly putting up factions against one another. And there's this big war game, basically, which stretches out over years instead of days like the Hunger Games. And you have these houses that fight each other. So imagine like the houses of the Harry Potter, school of wizardry, but instead of being together in the school, they're fighting each other. They're fighting real wars. It's a pretty gruesome war also. Lots of, the story is sometimes pretty shocking, but so is the Hunger Games. I just rewatched the first movie yesterday, and I'm like, wow, I forgot how gruesome this movie was. But now that I've listened to the audiobook, I feel like I'm filling it with images from from the Hunger Games series because the stories are so similar. So I immediately, and then the music and the sound effects and the voice acting really makes it feel like I've seen a movie. And it baffles me why this is not yet a television series. Like, why is Warner remaking the Harry Potter books if they can make this? Why don't they just get the rights to this story? It's so good. And it's written as a movie. And well, this audio dramatization shows us that it can work as a movie. I don't know why they keep just doing reboot after reboot of the same story. We're probably going to get another Spider-Man reboot, and then they're talking about doing a reboot of the Avengers. Oh my goodness, why? There's these wonderful stories out there, and it has already gathered such a massive fandom all over the world. I would totally watch any movie based on Red Rising. Baffles me. Sometimes Hollywood is like, gosh, you guys deserve to go down because this is such a, and this, I'm not talking about the writers and the actors and the artists. I'm talking about the people that just use this industry to make money. Like, there is no creativity among these people. How did they end up at the top there? It's almost as if these stories like the Hunger Games and Red Rising are a metaphor of Hollywood, where you have all these badly paid actors and writers slaving away for this elite that is just living the glorious, glamorous Hollywood life, and they don't care about how much these people that work for them are exploited. They don't truly care about the industry in which they are and the art that it basically produces. They just care about money. And I think it is time that things change. And I say this as a creator myself. I really think that we're on the verge of a new dawn when it comes to creativity. You have this massive wave of creativity on platforms like TikTok and YouTube. Everybody now has the tools to make movies with quality. You know, you don't have to have tons of money anymore to have the cameras and the software that the professionals use. That is in reach of anyone with a good idea. And maybe that will uproot the movie making industry and the television industry for good. I already see it shifting in my own country. Like, I've been working for television for 15 years. But the people that I've reached with my television programs, that generation is getting older and older and older, and no one under a certain age is watching television anymore. So even if I would go back to television, I would not have the reach that I had 15 years ago, let alone 5 years from now. I think television will be mostly wiped out. Streaming platforms will be probably around. But where I think the center of gravity will be is going to be in this massive, you could say amateur, but I don't think a lot of them are amateurs anymore. I think they're professionals. But it's this broad wave of creativity that we see all over the place. And that already goes far beyond just talking head videos and everything. There are people that are making short movies, and there are fans that are creating Star Wars movies that look almost as good as a real Star Wars production. In fact, some of these guys get hired by Lucasfilm because they're so good. And I think that's probably where we are going. And then with AI helping out with, for instance, special effects, that's usually what makes it so expensive. You can now do that with AI. You know, I just learn from this footage and then just turn me into Superman. Hey, I can already do it. Let alone, and we're just in the beginning stages of this technology. In a few years' time, there's no limit. And then what matters is not how much money you have, but it's like the ideas. It's a story. Anyone, like a kid with a webcam, can conquer the world. And that makes me so exciting. It feels almost as the dawn of podcasting, where if you just had a microphone like I had, as a priest, I had no audience. I wasn't on TV. I wasn't on radio. But I was reaching tens of thousands of people all over the world. And the same is right now true for TikTok. I film everything with my phone, and I'm reaching like 2 million people with some videos. 2 million. That's insane. That it's like 10 times more than I would reach even on national TV in the Netherlands. So, and that's just with a little bit of effort, let alone if, that's going to be my main focus for the years to come. Things are changing, and it's a good thing they change.
I need help.
You need a teacher. I can't teach you.
Maybe the internet has the information I need.
You know what I learned from the internet?
I understand that you learned a few new things.
There really is so much to learn.
And of course, in this part of the show for my patrons, I talk about everything I learned on the internet this week. And wow, I did actually learn quite a few things that I would like to share with you. And the first one is maybe the most boring one. I learned everything and more about screwdrivers. Yes, we're going to talk about screwdrivers. I think this is a first in the history of at least me podcasting, which dates back to 2005. I think that's when I started podcasting. This is the very first time that I talk about screws and screwdrivers. Why, you ask? Well, because I've been doing another IKEA project. Way back when, this goes back like 4 years ago, I think. I had just moved to the rectory in a town close to Amersfoort. And it was a big rectory, big house. And I back then I was trying to find like a TV, a piece of furniture for my TV. I think they call it a TV bench in English. So that I could put the TV on top of that. Before that, I think the TV, I had a relatively small TV that was just on what was it actually? It was this pretty old-fashioned thing that I bought at the what is it, like a secondhand store. But it was way too small for these bigger screens. And so I lived almost next door to IKEA back then. Oh, I still remember those days. I could basically get Swedish meatballs every day if I wanted to. I would hang out quite a bit at IKEA just because it's a fun place to be. And I wouldn't buy anything. I would just walk around and observe. This would be one of my favorite pastimes, is just walk around there and learn about interior decoration. And I would just see, well, why does this room feel so good? Even though I know it's a fake room, but what is it that makes it tick? And this is how I started to figure out, especially the importance of lights. So how IKEA uses like spotlights. You're not aware of how much the light is important to make it look lush and much bigger than it actually is. If you would turn out all the lights, you would still have the nice furniture, but it wouldn't look as good as it does with all the lights on. And so they pretend as if the lights that are there in those rooms are the ones that are lighting the scene. That's absolutely not true. Next time you're at IKEA, just look up and you'll see that they have these very specialized spots that they don't sell. You cannot buy that, even if you wanted to light your house in the same way. These are basically studio lights. And what they do is they beam onto certain highlights and some, like a painting on the wall or even like a detail on the coffee table. And it makes your brain go like, oh, sparkly, sparkly, I want. And before you know it, you leave IKEA with a car full of stuff that you actually don't need. And the moment you put it in your house, you're like, yeah, it doesn't look as good as at IKEA. Why? Well, anyway, so one of the corners that I will always go to is like the corner where they sell discarded stuff or demo furniture. So they obviously, since there's so many people visiting IKEA every day, the furniture that they demonstrate is going to be used. It's going to degrade. The chairs, the sofas, people sit on them. They move around. There are children playing at IKEA. And so every once in a while, they need to replace the demo furniture with new furniture. And then they put the demo furniture up for sale, usually with a pretty big discount in like the last corner, I think, of the store. That's where I always would go to buy my stuff, because it sometimes would knock off like half of the price. Or for instance, if a series, a certain color was discontinued, they put all the remaining furniture for half price in that corner, the budget corner, and I would just take it home. And so almost everything in my house right now is coming from that budget corner. So I had seen this one TV bench, and it was so cheap. I think it was just $40, and the catalog price was $100, and it was a black rectangular TV bench. Now I'm starting to wonder: was it already assembled, or did I just get it in the box and I assembled it myself? I don't recall. Maybe I assembled it myself. Because otherwise I had a car. Like, how did I get that back to the rectory? But I used to have a car. Now I'm thinking, even if I would visit IKEA, why? What's the point? I am on a bike. There's no way that I can take anything home. So anyway, so I had this TV bench, but it didn't have feet. It didn't have doors or shelves. It was just basically this big rectangular thing. And so I put it on the floor, put the TV on it, and it was too low, and it looked ugly. It just really... So when I moved to this place where I currently live, I was actually on the verge of getting rid of it. Just like give it to charity. I don't like it. And for a while, this has been just stored here somewhere. I don't even know where it was. I didn't put it in the living room because it didn't look like anything. So a while ago, I was back at IKEA, and I noticed that, wait a minute, I recognize this TV bench, but why does it look different? Oh, wait a minute, they have doors, and there is a drawer in the middle, and it's got feet. Is this a different model? Turns out it's a modular system, so you can buy these legs for it, and you can buy little doors, and of course, everything you buy in order to enhance this basic piece of furniture, the more you pay. But I was thinking, wait a minute, instead of throwing this thing away, I can upgrade it, and then it actually looks nice. And if I lift it up a little bit from the floor, it will have the right size. And so I got myself all the material, how did I get this home? Maybe I bought it while I still had a car, or maybe... I'm trying to think. Oh, no. I asked one of my parishioners if they could lend me their car. So I brought it home. And then it's been sitting, blame my ADHD brain, it's been sitting there in the living room for about 2 months now. Because I know exactly why. You need a screwdriver, you need material equipment to put it together. Even though it's IKEA, it's not really rocket science, but... I had a set of screwdrivers, and I knew that I bought them for very cheap, not at a hardware store. And I always had trouble with it. They were kind of not really connecting with the screws and everything. And so I was trying to put the doors in to kind of screw them into place, and I just couldn't get a grip on the screws. And then I was like, you know what? Why did I buy like super low budget tools? If I would have bought quality material, that could last a lifetime, So I went here to my local hardware store, and I said, I got to assemble some IKEA stuff. The man who helped me immediately looked at me wary. He's like, oh, you're poor guy. And so I said, my screwdrivers are all wrong, and they're all... And then he said, now I asked him, do you have better quality screwdrivers? And he said, I think I know what your problem is. It's not the screwdrivers. It's you're using the wrong screwdriver for these screws. And then he went on to explain to me that there are screws that look identical, and there are screwdrivers that from a distance look identical, but they're actually different. And so on the one hand, you have the Phillips screws. They have this little cross right in the center. You're probably familiar with that. And I thought that was the only type. And so I used the screwdrivers, and I thought the IKEA furniture also had those Phillips screws. Turns out, no, there is actually a variant of the Phillips screws. It's an improved version, and it's called the Positive screws. Sounds like something from Russia. The Positive screws. So if you use the Phillips screwdriver for the positive screws, you're screwed. Like, you will destroy the screwdriver. You need to have a positive screwdriver. And you can, if you look at the screw from up close, it has a bit of a star shape on it, which means your screwdriver needs to have that same symbol. On my super cheap screwdriver set, there were no symbols on it. I couldn't even tell what kind of screwdriver that was. So he said, take this. And he took, was it like a German brand? And it was like 5 years of warranty. And he says, you have 2 of each. This will last you a lifetime. You have but make sure you check the screws before you use it, and make sure you use the right screwdriver. You should be fine. And I'm taking this and I'm looking, German quality, 5 years of warranty, and there is no price on the shelf. This is going to cost me a fortune, but no, I need to do this. This is just tools, cost of doing business with IKEA. So I went to pay, and it turns out it was super cheap. It was like $25. And it's like 7 screwdrivers. That will last me a lifetime. So, man, it's like a total no-brainer. And in the end, I managed to assemble the whole thing. I wouldn't say without a hitch, because it was still frustratingly difficult. But it looks amazing. I posted a photo on Instagram the other day, and I'm so happy. And now I've put the Xbox. I had an old Xbox that I now use as a DVD player. Put that in the one on one side, and also the Apple TV, because in the past you need to have that in view because they were all like the remote was infrared, but now the the remotes are Bluetooth. So I could just close the doors. You don't see anything. It looks super clean, and the remotes still work. That's how I was able to watch the Hunger Games on the big TV downstairs, because it's all so beautiful. The only thing I need to somehow disguise is the black HDMI cable that goes from the console to the screen. It's just one cable. Anyway, that was a lot of fun. And I never thought I'd be talking about screwdrivers here on the show. What else did I need? Quick tip. Cooking. I discovered the best internet teacher ever. Actually, I don't think he is aware that he's on the internet because other people are posting his videos. But this guy is amazing. He's called Jacques Pépin, and he is a typical French chef. And I think he's had a TV show, or maybe he's got a YouTube channel. Well, someone is copying his stuff on TikTok. That's how I discovered him. And it's amazing. It's real French, honest cooking. It is all simple with fresh ingredients, nothing fancy, and the taste is fantastic. So I've been trying out a couple of his recipes, and I love it. He talks with a very heavy French accent, so they have like automatic captions, and that in itself is entertainment, because the automatic captioning doesn't understand his French accent. So you get these super weird and sometimes embarrassing captions of things that he says, and I know what he's saying because, well, I speak French and I think I understand a little bit better. But anyway, he demonstrates it. You don't need the captions. So I've been trying this one recipe, which is something I have been trying to make for my entire life and never figured out how to do it. Crepes. Just simple French crepes, the ones you get at a restaurant as a dessert. I've been trying to make pancakes or crepes for most of my life, and I've never figured out how to make them taste good. And I saw what he did, and there were like 2 things. I was like, why did no one ever tell me this? This should be taught in primary school. This is how you make crepes. Very simple. You use the flour, the egg, a little bit of milk. You mix it all together. You add some more milk, and that makes it. But then there is a secret. You put butter in a pan. He didn't use oil, so I'm just following his. He used just like this rich quality butter. It melted in the pan, and then, and this shocked me, he poured the molten butter into the batter, and then he mixed it. And he said it has to be really runny. But most people make the mistake that. It is too thick, and if it's too thick, it doesn't spread over the pan and it will burn. It has to be really thin, and the way to make it really thin is to make it really runny, and then you put it in the pan. But wait, before we put it in the pan, we add a bit of sugar in it and a little bit of salt. So the sugar, that was also like, what? You put sugar in a crepe? I thought you put sugar on the crepe. No, you put it also in the batter. Tastes so good. And then the third secret, you put instead of most people will put the batter in the middle, in the center of the pan, and then they twirl it around. But then you get all these really weird shapes. It is not really making a nice round crepe. So what you do, you tilt the pan a little bit. You put it in one corner, and then you turn it, and then you see you have this. I followed his instructions to the letter. And I had the most amazing crepes. He even shows you, like, it's only 1 minute. Because it's very thin, you turn it around. And then the other, you do even less. You know, it has to be almost like completely still very, like, yellowish, but it doesn't have to be brown. Because why? Before we serve it, we turn it around one last time in the pan. And then we slide it on the plate. So that if you roll it up, or you make like a triangle, like the crêpe Suzette that we have in French, you see the nice caramelized brown sides, so the exterior, but on the interior, it's very soft and very good. Oh my goodness. I had the Sunday morning of my life. Like, these are the best grapes I've ever had, and I made them myself. It is so incredibly cool. Anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you. And now I'm hungry for grapes. Thank you so much for the privilege of your time. Thank you so much for being a patron. I really appreciate it. And if you want to help out and help me to continue this ministry, then I would like to suggest that you start thinking about other people that may want to become patrons. We're going to start a winter campaign in a few weeks from now. And the aim is to find more people that can help us continue next year. Because we're still, like, we only have 1/3 basically of the income that we need to cover the costs. And we do want to get out of this situation before we run out of our reserves. So we realize that we don't have a marketing person to do that for us. We don't have money to advertise. But we do have you. We do have our patrons. And you know people that we don't know. You may even have people that are sympathetic to our efforts to reach young people with this kind of content, even though they are not young anymore, but they maybe want to support us. So if you can help us find these people, that'd be great. You'll hear more about that soon. Take care, and God bless.